The currencies have come down dramatically in emerging markets. The MSCI Emerging Markets Index is down about 30%. So I can agree that there is concern about these markets and what's happening. But what a lot of people forget is that this opens up opportunities, because a 30% decline is a time to be looking at the valuations. And some of these currencies are looking very, very cheap.
Like?
I was in Istanbul just a week ago, and things were so cheap. I wanted to stay. The hotel was so cheap.
Because there was a rather unusual election where a guy effectively elected himself for a lifetime appointment.
And no, basically, one of the positive things about Turkey is that there didn't have to be a runoff. Because if it was less than 50% that he got 52%. If you got less than that, there'd have to be a runoff, and that will create a lot of uncertainty. I think now probably you'll see more stability.
What about Mexico, given this new leadership?
Now, the thing people forget is that Mexico is not the problem, Canada is not the problem, China is the problem. 300 billion trade deficit with the U.S. It's more than any other country by far. So that's where. Wait,
are you saying that that's a problem, that China has a big trade debt? This is what the president's been saying.
Yes.
We haven't found that many people on CNBC that come out and agree with him.
I agree with him completely. I mean, the U.S. has been taken for a ride, let's face it, over the last 20, 30 years. And it's time to start saying, look, there has to be some reciprocity between these two countries, because it's just crazy to have this kind of deficit.
But I am old enough to remember, Mark, that even as a kid there was screams. I grew up in California, that Mexico was stealing all the American jobs. China took the maquiladoras. China took a lot of jobs from Mexico. Do you think there's a chance that China's labor force and their costs go up enough that we actually see some of that return to Mexico?
That's beginning to happen, but they've moved up the ladder in terms of technology. So they're exporting more and more very sophisticated equipment. I go around the world and I see Huawei, the Huawei, the company. Mm-hmm. They're outselling Ericsson and everybody else by a mile. So this is the big change that's taking place with China.
So if things escalate from here, and we're expecting $34 billion of Chinese goods to be taxed because going into the U.S. starting on Friday, and retaliatory tariffs back from China, who wins and who loses in the trade war?
I think at the end of the day, the U.S. is going to win this one, because the U.S. is the biggest importer in the world, and China needs the U.S.
Define winning. Can you define winning?
Well, of course, winning means
less economic damage,
getting some concessions and a reduction in the trade deficit.
So do you buy U.S. assets? You buy the U.S. dollar, U.S. stocks on that view?
But what I would buy now is those countries that are going to be exporting to the U.S. instead of China, like Bangladesh, Vietnam, Turkey. These are all big producers of garments and shoes, and the kind of consumer goods that they can replace China with.
The one thing that's happening with China, and this goes right to your area of expertise.
You're going to bring up currencies again?
The World Cup apparently is on behind us, by the way.
No. It was because you were about to talk about emerging markets.
That was
currencies.
The cheer when we talked about currencies. I love that. It was a talk about currencies.
By the way, one of the things about emerging markets, I got to say, emerging markets are winning the World Cups, don't forget.
Well, I liked your piece on Mobius Capital Partners about the African nations. Maybe we'll get to that in just a second.
Nigerian uniforms are killer, too.
They really were. Senegal, I'm sorry to see them gone. But let's get back to the markets now, because you've got this viewpoint, which is a little bit unusual, to your point as well. But here's the thing about China. They have what I called last week the economic bazooka. And we've already starting to see the yuan get devalued a little bit.
Yes.
Do you think China, because that's the howitzer, man, do you think they pull that out, Mark?
Yes, they'll pull out everything. A lot of
But doesn't that degrade them in some way economically as a nation?
Not really, because it enables them to export more. Don't forget, they have to set themselves up for a trade war with the U.S. What does that mean? They've got to create other markets as well, which is why you have One Belt, One Road, and all these programs to expand internationally, because they know at the end of the day, this trade war with the U.S. could be very serious.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.